We begin this morning with President Trump playing both the good cop and the bad cop on the foreign policy front. He is now offering to meet with Iranian leaders just a week after essentially threatening them with war. We have seen this movie before, you remember, with North Korea, and it did not end well. So how's it going to go this time? I have a great team here to break all of it down. But first, I want to explain exactly what we're talking about. Late Monday evening, we learned from the Washington Post North Korea is building new ballistic missiles that are capable of hitting the United States. The evidence comes from U.S. spy agencies and new satellite photos that show work underway at a research facility right outside the capital of Pyongyang. This would seem to validate concerns that North Korea had absolutely no intention of getting rid of its nuclear weapons, despite Kim's very vague promises following the summit that took place in June. At that time, President Trump went so far as to say the nuclear threat had been eliminated. But his own Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, said last week that does not appear to be the case.
North Korea continues to produce fissile material, nuclear bomb material. Is that correct?
Senator, I'm trying to make sure I stay on the correct. Yes, that's correct. Yes, they continue to produce fissile material.
Did you hear that? Here's why it's so problematic. The new evidence shows that North Koreans are not just working on any old missile. According to spy agencies, they are working on a specific kind of advanced ICBM. This missile has a potential range of more than 8,000 miles, meaning it is capable of hitting cities all the way on the East Coast. Bottom line, even after the president praised Kim Jong-un and the agreement they signed, the North is still working on weapons designed to kill hundreds of thousands of Americans. So how does this relate to Iran? If yesterday is any indication, the president seems intent on following the exact same playbook on Iran than he did with North Korea, offering to meet without any preconditions, then trusting his own abilities as a deal maker to reach a breakthrough. Here's what he said about Iran yesterday.
I do believe that they will probably end up wanting to meet, and I'm ready to meet anytime they want to. And I don't do that from strength or from weakness. I think it's an appropriate thing to do.
Do you have preconditions for that meeting?
No preconditions, no. They want to meet, I'll meet. Anytime they want. Anytime they want.
But welcome to Groundhog's Day. Here's the president's Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, again, this time on CNBC less than 2 hours later, appearing to add preconditions.
The president wants to meet with folks to solve problems. If the Iranians demonstrate a commitment to make fundamental changes in how they treat their own people, reduce their malign behavior, can agree that it's worthwhile to enter in a nuclear agreement that actually prevents proliferation, then the president said he's prepared to sit down and have the conversation with them.
So what are Iranians saying about all of this? This morning, their government is laying out its own preconditions. According to an Iranian presidential advisor, quote, respect for the great nation of Iran, reduction in hostilities, and the U.S. returning to the nuclear deal, that will open the rocky path of the moment. It is not that the idea of a meeting is a bad idea. In fact, Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein and Republican Senator Bob Corker both came out in favor of the president's offer, and it comes less than a week before the sanctions are set to snap back, putting Iran in a very vulnerable economic position. The question is whether the president's approach to negotiations can be effective this time when we still don't know if it worked the last time.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.